Water, currently the most precious resource in the western U.S. In Colorado, one plan to increase water storage, a massive undertaking at this reservoir that will benefit both Arvada and Lakewood. Years of planning about to be set in motion. A look at who supports it, who does not, and concerns that we may be entering our driest period in some 1,200 years. Hello everyone, and welcome to the conversation as we explore the solutions being implemented to enhance water storage capacity as drought continues to be a major feature of our western climate. Our guest today, two experts on water usage and capacity in our community. Sharon Israel is the Utilities Director for the City of Arvada, also an engineer I've learned, so you are immensely qualified for your job. And Denver Water's Program Manager on the Gross Reservoir Expansion Project, Jeff Martin, who I have also learned is an engineer as well as a guy who has a master's in business. So both of you eminently qualified, particularly at this moment, given all that's going on with our water and various projects. Welcome to you both. Thank you so much for giving your time to us today. And I should also mention that almost all of Lakewood's water comes from mountain snowmelt and runoff supplied by Denver Water. So I want to start with a question that a lot of viewers sent us about water and the communities of Arvada and Lakewood. So Sharon, first of you if you would please, viewers want to know, Arvada has this fabulous system. It treats and delivers 6.2 billion gallons of water, which is incredible, via 531 miles of water lines, 2 treatment plants, 9 water tanks, and 6 pump stations. So this marvelous infrastructure, but a lot of your customers, a lot of the people in Arvada and Lakewood both want to know, do we have enough water? Is Arvada in trouble, at risk of running out?
It's a question we get, and it's a question we think about a lot. So I want to talk about that word you used, which was risk. Are we at risk of running out of water? And today I can tell you we are in great shape when it comes to water supply, in part because of the project we're going to be talking about a little bit later. That is our Gross Reservoir Expansion Partnership with Denver Water. The way that we ensure that we don't outgrow our water supply kind of comes in 2 different angles. One angle is we look really closely at land use and water use together. So when we're forecasting what kind of land development is going to be planned for the city, we have a comprehensive plan. We've got urban planners. We look at what we want that city to look like. At the same time, we are also forecasting how much water is that going to take. And so we don't ever want our development to get too far ahead of where we know our water supply can take us. And so that's one way we make sure we keep that risk low, that risk of running out of water. The other way we look at the sort of risk of running out of water is we look at what previous droughts have done to our water supply. So in Arvada, we have a drought period we looked at. It's 1953 to 1967. So if we look at all the data out there in terms of water availability, those were the years that were our shortest years. And so we use that and we model what would our system be able to deliver to us if we had that same 14-year dry spell again. So the word we use a lot is resiliency. We want to be resilient when we talk about our water supply. We want to make sure that our land use matches what our water supply can support. And we also make sure that we're forecasting what that drought condition would do to us if we had to live through it again.
Right. Well, Jeff, same question for you regarding Lakewood's water. Does Lakewood have a resilient supply as well, or are there risk factors for Lakewood?
Well, I could speak to Denver Water and how we manage our entire portfolio, which includes a lot of our distributors or partners throughout the Denver metro area. So for us, we not only look at the demand portion and the supply portion, but also the resiliency, as Sharon just talked about. For us, we have a really large imbalance in our system. Most of our water supply comes from the South Platte drainage, also connected to the Upper Colorado drainage in the Blue River. 90% of our water storage is on that south side. We're only 10% on the north side, which ultimately feeds the city of Arvada. And that's where most of the water that goes to the city of Arvada originates. And when we look at the resiliency, we look at what can happen, what is the the major events or uncertainty that exists in the system, such as major wildfires, drought, extreme drought events, and how can we make sure that we have water where we need it, as well as having the water when we need it.
You touched on fire, which has become such a big feature for the West this year, and I know water managers all across the country are watching that in terms of watersheds and protecting the quality of the water in reservoirs from ashfall and what have you. And there have been 35,000 fires across the U.S. already this year. That's just staggering. I mean, we watched the few big ones that burn around here. 2.5 million acres has burned. 20,000 firefighters are working. And we're approaching 100 large fires now. So it's one of those really critical things, which brings me to the question of development. Arvada and Lakewood, in fact, all of Jefferson County, a beautiful place to live, beautiful communities, and seemingly under a lot of pressure for new development. I mean, look at our metro area. I mean, we're out of places to live. Look at the housing market. So I'm wondering, is that something that both of you watch carefully? And Jeff, I'll ask you first. Are you worried about infrastructure exceeding your capabilities to deliver water?
Well, Denver Water is in a unique position. We are a water provider. Unlike the city of Arvada and the city of Lakewood, which are also municipal land use organizations, we provide water to our customers, and that's our number one charge. So notably though, with the expansion of Gross Reservoir, Denver Water's made commitments throughout Colorado, including the Colorado River Cooperative Agreement. In that agreement, we specifically make commitments to our geographical area, Denver Water's geographical service area, make commitments that we will not expand outside of those service areas with the addition of Gross. So for us, our geographical and expansion and land use is really set through the Gross Reservoir Expansion Project.
Okay. We're going to cover that in detail in a moment. What about Arvada and pressures for development here, which have also been immense?
Sure. You just have to drive through Arvada and see there's construction of new homes, new businesses. It's an exciting time in a lot of ways, and I think that's reflective of the whole metro area. For folks like me, I've been in this area about 20 years, and wow, like so many new and really exciting developments planned. So it's natural to think about how much more can we support. So when we are talking about that at the city of Arvada, we're talking about what our city needs, understanding we do get deliveries from Denver Water. That's about 75% of our water supply. The rest of our water supply comes through a system through Clear Creek. And when we're talking about what can that portfolio of water rights support, again, we're going back to what kind of land development do we envision for the future? You know, how many more houses, how many more businesses, how many more acres are going to get annexed into the city? So one thing we're very careful about, and it is difficult sometimes, is how much we grow in accordance with that comprehensive plan over a period of time. How quickly does that happen? So right now, Arvada has a comprehensive plan. It includes a lot of land within the current city limits. It also includes some property outside of the city limits that we do envision eventually annexing. It's a hard conversation to have with some of these property owners who want to annex in because they want the water service, they want the sewer service, they want the value added from being a part of the city. In certain areas of our comprehensive planning zone overall, we're saying no right now. And that is a very difficult conversation to have. The answer is no and not yet, because we are counting on water supply development coming in through the Gross Reservoir Expansion Project. Very exciting. What that will do is provide us enough water supply to get to what we envision our build out to be.
Right. And what a project this is, and it's just a remarkable engineering thing. I know as engineers you probably just love the details, but for people like me who have absolutely no concept of how this might work, essentially you're taking the Gross Reservoir Dam and you're building it 131 feet higher, am I right?
That's correct.
And it's going to be 800 feet wide at completion. Is that correct? The dam, it will be some 800 feet wide?
Well, the crest length will even be longer, 1,800 feet long.
Oh, for heaven's sakes. So I have to tell you, when I say this to people, because I've I'm fascinated by it, and I've watched it and looked at it, and I say, you know what? Colorado, because we are so dry, although I must say the Front Range just lucked out this year, how that happened. The West Slope not so much, but looking down the road at how long this could continue, nobody knows. So they're going to build this dam 131 feet higher, and people say to me, how do you build a dam on top of a dam? I mean, that's everyone's first question. So that's my question to the two of you. How do you build a dam on top of a dam? How do you do that?
Well, I'll speak to that, Mark. It's really goes back to the original design of the dam. It's a 340-foot tall concrete dam, and the original designers developed and designed the dam for a future raise. And the future raise was pretty close to what we're going to raise it now at 124 feet was the original contemplation. But what we're going to essentially do is use the existing dam as a foundation for the new dam, and when we're complete, the dam will act as one structure and behave as one single dam. And it's really a unique, innovative design in which we're taking a gravity dam and transforming it into what's called an arch dam because it already has a natural arch in it. And that provides just a ton of benefits on the performance of the dam, and it creates a very robust structure that really just will blend in and be a part of the mountainside there. It's really an incredible way that it's being designed and very innovative in and of itself.
Can't wait to watch and see how it goes. So benefits Denver Water and certainly Lakewood's water supply, and I know Arvada is all about it because this is a more certain future for you in terms of water.
That's right. We have been partners with Denver Water for since the beginning of the project. Understanding that if we were to partner with Denver Water, we would be able to have enough water once this project is constructed to build out the city as we have contemplated in our comprehensive plan. And so this is exciting for us. We are, not everybody knows this, but we are a financial partner in this project. Arvada is paying 1/6 of the construction cost, and in return, I'm receiving 1/6 of the anticipated water supply coming out of the project. So as a practical matter, and I'll put my engineer hat on, what that means is about 3,000 acre feet for the city of Arvada. And when we talk about water, and we use that term acre feet, it's just like it sounds. 1 acre of land, 1 foot deep of water, that is a term of art we use. And for a ballpark estimate for our community in Arvada, 1 acre foot is equivalent to 2 households. So for planning purposes, we say 1 acre foot's 2 households. So if we've got 3,000 acre feet coming from our partnership with Denver Water, that is the water we'll use to supply those additional homes we expect to be building.
Gives the city an opportunity to grow again. Somebody, another water engineer, because I've talked to a lot of them in advance of this show, said that there are moments in Colorado, because of the cost of pumping and storage, that a barrel of water is more valuable than a barrel of oil. Do you guys concur with that? Is that a true statement? It sounds so right. Has anybody ever done the math on that?
So it wouldn't be quite that, but water is still, because it's an essential resource, and because it's our charge, both Denver Waters and the city of Arvada, to provide an essential resource. The cost is certainly not equivalent to a barrel of oil, but it is so precious as a natural resource, and we treat it with the same value, both organizations, on either how we reuse, we conserve, and we utilize that resource to the fullest extent.
The engineer told me, well, it costs almost as much as a barrel of oil, but we treat it like it's gold right now because given the supply. So the idea is to build additional storage to prevent future shortfalls of water and to allow for growth. Also to enhance dependability of water for wildfires and drought and everything else. But why Gross Reservoir, and why now, given that we have so many other reservoirs, and I say so many, and I'm not sure of the number, but isn't it 40-some reservoirs that Denver Water, is that too big a number?
It's too big. Denver Water operates about 20 reservoirs.
So it's half right.
You were half correct, yes. You were near there, and we have some very significant reservoirs. Obviously, Dillon Reservoir is Denver Water's largest reservoir,
Which is full right
and
now,
it is full. And in Colorado, like we talked about earlier, it really depends where the water falls over the year. And sometimes we can be fortunate that it falls heavy in one part of our system, and it can fall very light in another part of our system. And that's why we do like to have and why we plan reservoirs throughout the watershed, so we can really try to capture where that snowfall falls and runs off, and so we can really have a resilient supply. The Gross Reservoir expansion, it puts water where we need it. It's not just adding capacity to our system, it's putting it on our north end and really increasing the storage value there on our north side, which then reduces the risk for our partners on the north side.
Right. The risk part of your jobs is so difficult. I mean, look how the Front Range started, the spring. I mean, I know in my neighborhood, yards were turning brown, new plantings were withering, and then the skies opened up. It's such a roll of the dice. But this project is fascinating. And Sharon, you mentioned it's been almost a quarter of a century now in development, the Gross Reservoir expansion. So there are people. Have you spent your entire career on this? I mean, from the moment you arrived, have you been the Gross Reservoir guy? Or
no, but I have spent a significant amount of time. So I've been working on this project exclusively for 8 years now, and we started it in 2004. So we have been, as an organization, pursuing a resilient water supply through Gross Reservoir for 17 years now.
It's just amazing. And it's all the environmental hurdles and all the planning and all the engineering. I mean, there's a lot that goes into it. And the cities have been a big player in this, in helping Denver Water determine what direction they want this to go.
Yes, so there's the benefit directly from water supply, but there's also a lot of ancillary benefits associated with environmental flows for habitat, for fish. I don't know if you want to speak to that.
Yeah, I read the other day that you guys have permitted releases for water flows downstream where water temperatures have been rising and threatening wildlife.
Yeah, the South Boulder Creek is the creek that Gross Reservoir sits on. And through the Gross Reservoir Expansion Project, we've made a lot of commitments to make the environment of Colorado better, either on the west slope or the east slope. On the east slope specifically, we have increased the height of the reservoir by 6 feet to accommodate another 5,000 acre-feet of water, specifically for the enhancement of South Boulder Creek, and to put water in a creek that normally might flow dry under its normal natural water flow in the fall and winter months. We're going to be able to enhance those flows to really protect the aquatic environment of South Boulder Creek during low flow times. And we have business partners that are helping us achieve that too. The City of Boulder and the City of Lafayette are both partners in making sure that the South Boulder Creek and that environmental pool really provides a good benefit for the east slope of Colorado.
It speaks to your infrastructure, but it seems to be such a difficult, it's a math problem for engineers, I suppose, trying to figure out who gets water and who doesn't. But I know that you are so sold on this project. I know your city council is sold on the project, but what about your customers? I mean, is it a tough sell for anybody?
So I think where our customers maybe feel it is this translates into what our tap fees are in Arvada. So we hear about, we get questions, why are our tap fees so high? In Arvada, a typical home is going to pay about $20,000 for a tap fee, and that pays for not only this water supply, this wet water we're talking about, having water in the bucket. Right. It also has to pay for all of the pipelines to get us to the treatment plants, to get us out to the city, to our water tanks.
Right. That's new construction, right? We're talking about.
Thank you, new construction. So every new home has a tap fee associated with it.
And that's true all over the country.
All
actually,
over.
So, right.
So if you look at our tap fee right now at $20,000, we are about $13,000 of that is just for the water, just for the wet water. And I'll tell you what, the costs are going up. So that's a low price on the market these days.
Really?
Something that is interesting, I would say, about the metro area and all the different cities. And we're sitting here representing Denver Water and Arvada. But every city is responsible for procuring their own water supply. And a lot of this water supply that's available in this area, it goes back to the 1860s in water rights. And so we are literally serving water at the tap based on water supply rules and law that was established back as early the 1860s.
Largely agricultural, largely for irrigation. So
Exactly.
this goes back, a century and a half anyway.
It's a part of our history. Right. It's an amazing part of our history. And part of what's happened over the last 150 years is that communities like Arvada and many others, Lakewood, have decided, well, we need to figure out how our community is going to be served. So Arvada, we have a water rights portfolio. Our neighbors, Westminster, Thornton, North Glen, Lakewood, everybody has their own water rights portfolio that has a different challenges with resiliency, different, I would say, level of forecasting that's done based on the different types of water that come in. So I mentioned Denver Water supplies about 75% of Arvada's. Right. The rest of it coming from our Clear Creek sources. That's the other 25%. So when we're thinking about how to meet the city's needs overall, we're really thinking about Arvada, and at the state level, there are sort of general plans being made, but each community is still kind of in and on their own.
I had no idea. So, Jeff, when you work with Lakewood and when you work with Arvada, are you bound by this water profile, this plan that they have, or are you helping them make their own? Or how does that work? How does that work for Denver Water, since you supply so much water?
Yeah, so Denver Water provides water to nearly a quarter of the population of Colorado. Over 1.5 million people receive Denver Water's water. And so we manage our own water rights, and our primary customer are the residents of the city and county of Denver, but we have long standing relationships with business partners and distributors like Arvada. And so they may manage some of their own water portfolios, and like Sharon described, some of their water portfolio may involve commitments with Denver Water of providing, in the case of City of Arvada, 75% of their water supply. So those are long-standing agreements that are in place between Denver Water and the City of Arvada.
Right. I know we've talked a lot about raw water. The city, Arvada, I imagine Lakewood too, has a raw water contract with Denver Water. And I'm just curious to know what raw water is, and what you do with it once you. So you tell me what it is, and then I want to know what you do with it once you get it.
So raw water just is the water that comes out of the mountain streams and reservoirs, and where we receive the water, and it has not been treated. And in the case of the partnership between Denver Water and City of Arvada, we provide raw water to the City of Arvada.
Some 6.2 billion gallons of it. So you get it, and then you treat it.
We do. What we do to get water, filling our glasses here in Arvada, we receive the raw water into our reservoirs, and we have a whole team of people that are monitoring the water quality in those reservoirs.
I've seen them in boats. They're out there in boats.
It's a great job. A beautiful view out there. And so they're out there monitoring to see what is in this raw water that we want to make sure that we remove in the treatment process. Sure. And it's natural water, so it varies based on the season, it varies based on weather conditions. So they're out there monitoring. And then the water is piped to one of our 2 water treatment plants. And so one of our water treatment plants runs year-round. The other is just in the summertime, because everybody's watering in the summertime and demand goes up. Right. So the water's treated at our water treatment plants. A lot of regulatory oversight goes into that. Sure. So the EPA and the state health department require us to do extensive monitoring to make sure that water is safe to drink and it meets all standards.
There you go. And I think I told you that as I talk to people, almost overwhelmingly, it's like, you know what? I just never really thought about it. I just turn on the faucet and there it is. And until this year, when this got so dire in the western United States, and, with half of Colorado in extreme drought, a lot of people, they say, well, I didn't think about it. But you made a good point that it's something usually we didn't have to think about and we could go on to other things. But maybe that's not the case right now.
lot of challenges right now. I think one of them is water supply we've been talking about, and that's why projects like the Gross Reservoir Storage Project is so important. When you add storage to a water supply system, it gives you more resiliency. So storage helps us get through the dry years because we can take water in the wet, even the average years.
Right.
But water supply is only one piece. So it's all the other infrastructure. It's the pipes, it's the treatment plants, it's the storage tanks. Across the country, there's aging infrastructure. You hear about it everywhere.
That's a problem for Denver Water too. For both of you, for the country, those water systems, many of them are, well, not just decades old, some of them are even older than that. So that's a challenge as well for everybody. I'm curious to know, so here you've both been looking at this project for a big piece of both of your careers. So what's the finish line? What's that look like? Are we 5 years away? Once you start it, does it take 5 years to do, 3 years to do, 10 years to do? How long does it take to build a dam on top of a dam? I guess that's the question.
We're looking at 5 years of construction effort once we start, and we're looking at starting next year. And so we are planning towards that and planning around how do you build such a large, complicated, complex project really over the course of only 6 to 8 months out of the year, because it's a high elevation site and we have to shut down during the winter period for portions of the period. So we anticipate about 5 years. Our goal is to build as quickly as we can. What's interesting about the type of construction that we're doing with Gross Reservoir Expansion is actually the faster we build it, we will achieve a higher quality product. So once we get on site, we're going to be looking at building almost around the clock for a couple years to raise the dam, and then we're going to do preparatory work before those couple years and some finish work afterwards. But we're really going to raise that dam over the course of 2 years. Wow, or 2 seasons.
That's amazing. So the water, you just lower the water a little bit, I guess, below the existing dam, and then you work on top. How does that work? That's the question I get. How do they do that? It goes to how do they do that?
Yeah, that's right. Our structural design has actually designed the new raise so we wouldn't have to lower the water level at all. However, we are going to lower the water level a bit just for risk reduction. If we had a flood event or something happened during construction, we need to make sure we can capture that water and wouldn't have it running into our construction. So we take it down for risk management about 50, 60 feet we plan to right now, which is over half the supply of gross. And even lowering it that much really does stress the entire rest of our system.
Oh, I'm
so
sure. Right.
We're motivated to finish the project as quickly as we can.
Go fast. Are there a lot of these reservoirs that have dams like this where you can just build another dam on top of the one that's already there, or is Gross unique in that respect?
Gross is very unique. It has been done before. There's a dam in San Diego that was recently completed, quite similar to what we're doing here. So there's precedent, and it's been done before, but it's still extremely unique what we're doing.
I had a lot of people ask me, and I don't know why, but they want to know, is the reservoir, does it go offline? Is there like no water coming out of Gross? Is that why we're stressing the system? I guess that's what happens, right?
Yeah, well, we're losing some storage in there while we construct, and so we're just balancing that in the rest of our system, but we take on some risk there. But no, we're going to have water coming out. We need to make sure we're providing water to South Boulder Creek. We need to make sure we're still providing some water to the rest of our system. So we'll still have water flowing through the dam while we're building it.
People didn't worry about it a couple of years ago, but they worry about it now. Of course they do. And I should say that there's a remarkable video of this, and we're using a lot of it for this broadcast, but we'll attach your website. Your people sent us unbelievable pictures of this and how far it's going to go and how high it's going to be and what goes into it. And then, of course, there's the cost. So this is literally hundreds of millions of dollars. Yes, Mark, it is. Could you even forecast?
Yeah, we have we're planning around, like you said, hundreds of millions of dollars. Right now, our last estimate was done in 2017, and we're looking around over $460 million to build this dam. Obviously, things have changed since 2017, and we're working through the final design effort now, and then we'll be working with a contractor on negotiating and finding the right value of this project to bring to our customers.
Somebody told me, water so expensive and water projects so expensive, but how do you put a price on water? You really can't put a price on on water. I want to do some of my weather facts for you here, all right? And this is kind of a true or false thing, but you can elaborate if you like. But this is kind of a snapshot of what's going on here and in the country. These are statements about what's going on with weather conditions in the U.S. and what maybe it looks like for us going forward. But the first fact is a scorching drought made worse by climate change is draining reservoirs across the West at an alarming pace. True or false?
True.
True.
Yeah, really, especially out in California. I think, how many large fires do they have burning? I mean, you can't even keep track of them. They just break out daily. The drought is fueling massive wildfires, deadly heat waves, and withering the agricultural economy in California, which, as it turns out, is one of the country's most important. California grows virtually anything and everything that we eat. True or false?
True, and I'd like to speak to that because we're talking about this long-standing drought now in the western U.S. and it is absolutely debilitating parts of our economy, our ability to have resilient water supply. When we talk about the planning that we do for water supply, we're looking at what type of variability we're going to have in weather.
Right.
What's interesting, I think you mentioned this, Mark, is this year, it's a wet year on the Front
Yes,
Range. Everything's full.
And everything west, completely the
Everything
opposite.
west,
I
completely.
mean, the mountains, that's the demarcation. I think the Rockies, right, is how.
That's where, if you just look at the drought map, on the Front Range, we look great. On the West Slope, it is absolutely devastating.
Right.
When we're doing our water supply planning, we never know if and when that's going to switch.
Right.
We never know when we're going to have our dry spell. And so back to storage as a way to mitigate that. If you've been following any of even the visuals of Lake Powell right now.
Right, Lake Powell, Lake Mead.
Yes,
Yeah,
Lake Mead.
Lake Oroville, which is water supply for Los Angeles. I mean,
you
can walk across it practically.
They're close to hitting the minimum that they need to just even generate power at some of those stations. Terrifying.
Turning off the hydroelectrics. Yeah, right.
It's important to remember that what it took to build those reservoirs in the first place. So we had the resiliency to get as far as we did. Now those reservoirs are drying up, and it's horrible to see that.
Right.
In order for us to continue to sustain the agriculture you mentioned, in order for us to supply water for our cities, one way that we reduce the risk of having devastating and drought conditions that have impacts on all these ways, one way we do that is we build storage.
Right. And you mentioned how long this has been going on. It began in the year 2000. Jeff actually says that somewhere in one of your many marvelous tutorials online. The last 22 years actually rank as the driest 22 years in the West in some 1,200 years. That's staggering. And modern society, as we know it at this moment, has never seen climate conditions this dry. So it's new territory for a lot of us, new territory for a lot of engineers, people like yourself. So, it's so uncertain. I mean, storage looks to be one solution, but what happens if all the reservoirs go dry? I mean, you look at, there's 3 cities, Las Vegas, Phoenix, and Los Angeles, according to many experts on the West Coast, would not be possible without water stored in reservoirs. Wouldn't be possible. There's no water for the people that live there. They're huge cities. So what happens after that?
Well, I would just add, for us, the only thing that's certain is uncertainty. And we absolutely anticipate an uncertain future. And in 2002, shortly after the drought started, we experienced that. We experienced the Hayman Fire directly in the middle of our watershed. And up until last year, the Hayman Fire was the largest Colorado wildfire in history. Unfortunately, that was eclipsed last year by a couple fires in Colorado. So uncertainty is our future, and planning around that is necessary, and storage is a big component about that. What we haven't spoke too much about is the other big component is our reuse and reduction strategies. So how do we reuse what we have, and how do we really conserve and go through a cultural shift of conservation, of conserving the natural resource as much as we can? And both City of Arvada and Denver Water are committed to that, and that's as much a part of this project as the storage component.
Right, and we know the federal government is about to step in. I mean, there's a lot of discussion now about the federal government, for the first time ever, initiating an emergency declaration for the Colorado River, and states downstream perhaps cutting their water use by as much as 25% and beyond. If I were you, the thing that would keep me awake at night is that 40 million people in 7 states depend on water from the Colorado River. And here we are sitting at the top of it, so I guess we're in the catbird seat, but still, that's a lot of people downriver that would be impacted by this.
A lot of people. And there are interstate compacts that govern how much water needs to be released from one state to another. And so we get into a situation someday where we might have to release water downstream, even though we know we need it here to fulfill those compacts.
Yeah. Another weather fact, experts say, and when I say experts, I'm talking about NOAA and NASA and all these people who watch, the world's water. They say that the Colorado River is a river system and a water supply that cannot fail. But we know it's delicate right now. I mean, that's also, I should ask you, true or false? Of course it's true. I mean, it would be catastrophic.
I'd like to mention a term that we're starting to see more, I think, in the industry, and that term is demand management. We're starting to use it even in Arvada. Demand management is the side of the equation that's opposite supply. So there's a certain amount we can do to develop supply, right? We can build the reservoirs, we can be very thoughtful with our reuse of water when we can. But there's a piece of this that is on how much demand do we have? Demand for, we talked about this, planned development, demand for agriculture, demand for outdoor watering.
So this is everybody. This is customers, farmers, businesses. You're talking about
that is
demand management for everybody.
For everybody.
So is this when we get to a point you have to impose restrictions? Is that what that is?
Drought restrictions.
I mean, what else do you do, right? What else do you do?
Drought restrictions are certainly a tool in the toolbox, and I think that other types of demand management that are on the horizon, things like regularly having certain days when you water and certain days that you don't, not just for drought conditions, but all the time, year-round. We're starting to have conversations about what it takes to sort of level out that demand. I think you're seeing this in other Western cities. What does landscape look like? What does a beautiful landscape look like? And certainly here in the metro area, we've got lawns and gardens and lush green grass, and that puts a demand on the system. So there are discussions to have. I think we all are thinking about it, is how much do we reduce demand to help balance the supply and demand conversation.
I know in Nevada already, there's been a lot of talk about demand management, and they're eliminating 60% of what they call unnecessary planting. So that's grass in medians, flower beds in public parks, things they just can't water anymore. They're just eliminating them and rocking them over. So we're already starting to see some of that impact of demand management in states downriver.
I couldn't agree more, and I think that that's a trend, and that I anticipate that trend will continue, because at the end of the day, our priority is indoor water service. When we talk about all the supply that we've developed, what's the absolute bare minimum that we have to make sure that we're providing the community?
Yeah.
And that is water to drink, water to right. Water to wash your dishes, water to flush the toilets,
right.
The basic indoor demand, and that's going to take a partnership really with our community members. We're starting to talk with them about what demand management means overall, and it's a huge topic that really does get to the heart of what what do we want our cities to look like.
Exactly, and that goes to, these are two beautiful communities, Lakewood and Arvada. And communities like this are all up and down the Front Range, beautiful parks, places people gather in large numbers. I mean, it would just be a tragedy to see those go away. There was this is another weather fact. Experts at NASA say that we may need a solid decade of really wet years. It's so dry right now. We may need a solid decade of really wet years to recover from the drought that we are currently experiencing. Does that, I mean, he's an expert, but I'd love to ask other experts if you guys think the same.
Sure.
That's 10 years.
We would expect that. It's taken 20 years of drought to get to where we are. And to add, I think, as Sharon pointed out earlier, we're set on a system of individual water rights, but we also have a really good leadership by the state of Colorado and the Colorado Water Conservation Board, who are helping the entire state look forward to what demand management looks like. And from a broader perspective, that's working with all users within the state of Colorado to make sure that we stay focused on Lake Powell and keep the right amount of water in Lake Powell. All of Coloradans should be interested in Lake Powell. That is our largest storage bank for Colorado and other headwater states in the Colorado to make sure that we provide the water downstream. We are looking at the lowest levels we've ever seen,
right.
And especially in 20 years, if we watch Lake Powell, it's just been dropping. And so all of us, Colorado, Denver Water, City of Arvada, are all focused on Lake Powell and making sure that we have the right management practices to keep Lake Powell up and then also provide for resilient and vibrant cities.
Right. Pictures of Lake Powell and Lake Mead and even the big reservoirs in California, they're just stunning, the giant bathtub ring. And somebody wrote an article the other day that there is a stone arch that's now exposed that has not been seen since Lake Powell was engineered in the first place. I mean, you can actually jump in the water and swim through the arch. The water's that low, you can see the top of it. And those pictures are just so alarming. Well, we can just hope for the best and hope for great storage projects to get us all through us, because Colorado is still exploding, thousands of people moving here every month from other places where they've had so much difficulty this past winter. One more weather fact, Sharon Israel and Jeff Martin must come back to this program as we go forward and look at what's going to happen to water usage and water supplies along the Colorado River and in Colorado. That's true, I think.
Be happy to come back and revisit and,
that is true.
And walk through the benefits and walk through the construction and revisit what just a great project this will be for Colorado.
Right. I told you we'd only get through half. I mean, I kind of briefed my guests just to let them know what's coming. We never even get close, so we have another 3 or 4 programs here anyway. But Sharon Israel, the City of Arvada, and Jeff Martin, Denver Water, my thanks to both of you. We so appreciate your time and your knowledge and your work on behalf of the people who still want to turn on the faucet and get a drink of water.
Thank
Cheers.
you.
Cheers to both of you. Cheers to both of you. I'll reach over there. It is. Okay. We'll see you again.
Okay, thanks.
And we'll see you again as well. Thanks to all of you for joining us.